안녕하세요. 오늘은 찰리의 초콜릿 공장의 비밀 제12장 What is said on the golden ticket을 낭독해 보도록 하겠습니다. Charlie burst through the front door shouting, Mother, Mother, Mother! Mrs. Burkett was in the old grandparent room, serving them their evening sup. Mother, yelled Charlie, rushing in on them like a hurricane. Look, I've got it! Look, Mother, look! The last golden ticket is mine. I found some money in the street and I bought two candy bar and the second one has the golden ticket and there were a crowd of people all around me wanting to see it and the shopkeeper rescued me and I ran all the way home and here I am. It's the fifth golden ticket, Mother, and I've found it. Mrs. Burkett simply stood and stared while the four old grandparents, who were sitting up in bed balancing bowl of soup on their laps, all dropped their spoon with a clatter and froze against their pillows. For about 10 seconds, there was absolute silence in the room. Nobody dared to speak or move. It was a magic moment. Then very softly Grandpa Joe said, You are pulling our leg, Charlie, aren't you? You are having a little joke? I am not, cried Charlie, rushing up to the bed and holding out the large and beautiful golden ticket for him to see. Grandpa Joe leaned forward and took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket. The other watched him, waiting for the verdict. Then, very slowly, with a slow and marvelous grin spreading on over his face, Grandpa Joe lifted his head and looked straight at Charlie. The color was rushing to his cheek, and his eyes were wide open, shining with joy, and in the center of each eye, right in the very center, in the black pupil, a little spark of wild excitement was slowly dancing. Then the old man took a deep breath, and suddenly, with no warning whatsoever, an explosion seemed to take place inside him. He threw up his arms and yelled, Yippee! And at the same time his long bony body rose up out of the bed and his bowl of soup went flying into the face of Grandma Josephine. And in one fantastic leap, this old fellow of the 96 and a half, who hadn't been out of bed these last 20 years, jumped onto the floor and started doing a dance of victory in his pajamas. Yippee! He shouted. 3 cheers for Charlie. Hip hip, hooray! At this point, the door opened and Mr. Burkett walked into the room. He was cold and tired, and he looked it. All day long he had been shoveling snow in the street. Crips, he cried, what's going on in here? It didn't take them long to tell him what had happened. I don't believe it, he said. It's not possible. Show him the ticket, Charlie, shouted Grandpa Joe, who was still dancing around the floor like a dervish in his striped pajamas. Show your father the 50th and last golden ticket in the world. Let me see it, Charlie, Mr. Bucket said, clasping into a chair and holding out his hand. Charlie came forward with the precious document. It was a very beautiful thing, this golden ticket having been made so it seemed from a sheet of pure gold hammered out almost the thinness of paper. On one side of it, printed by some clever method in jet black leather, was the invitation itself from Mr. Wonka. Read it aloud, said Grandpa Joe, climbing back into bed against at last. Let's all hear exactly what it says. Mr. Burkett held the lovely golden ticket up close to his eyes. His hands were trembling silently, and he seemed to be overcome by the whole business. He took several deep breaths, then he cleared his throat and said, All right, I'll read it. Here we go. Greeting to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket from Mr. Willy Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for one whole day. You and all others who are lucky enough to find my golden ticket. I, Willy Wonka, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything that there is to see, and afterward, then, when it is time to leave, you will be escorted home by a procession of a large truck. This truck, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious eatable to last you and your entire household for many years. If at any time thereafter you should run out of supplies, you have only to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket, and I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you will be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting thing that will happen on the day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you and for all my beloved golden ticket holders. Mystic and marvelous surprise that will entrance, delight, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dream, you could not imagine that such a thing could happen to you. Just wait and see. And now, here in your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day in the month of February. On this day and on no other, you must come to the factory gate at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late, and you are allowed to bring with you either one or two members of your own family to look after you and to ensure that you don't get into mischief. One more thing, be certain to have this ticket with you, otherwise you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. The first day of February, cried Mrs. Burkett. But that's tomorrow. Today is the last day of January. I know it is. Creepy, said Mrs. Burkett. I think you are right. You're just in time, shouted Grandpa Joe. There's not a moment to lose. You must start making preparations at once. Wash your face, comb your hair, scrub your hands, brush your teeth, blow your nose, cut your nails, polish your shoe, iron your shirt, and for heaven's sake, get all that mud off your pants. You must get ready, my boy. You must get ready for the biggest day of your life. Now don't overexcite yourself, Grandpa, Mrs. Burkett said, and don't fluster poor Charlie. We must all try to keep very calm. Now the first thing to decide is this: who is going to go with Charlie to the factory? I will, shouted Grandpa Joe, leaping out of bed once again. I'll take him. I'll look after him. You leave it to me. Mrs. Burkett smiled at the old man. Then she turned to her husband and said, How about you, dear? Don't you think you ought to go? Well, Mr. Burkett said, pausing to think about it. No, I'm not so sure that I should, but you must. There's no must about it, my dear, Mr. Burkett said gently. Mind you, I'd love to go. It'd be tremendously exciting, but on the other hand, I believe that the person who really deserves to go most of all is Grandpa Joe himself. He seems to know more about it than we do, provided, of course, that he feels well enough. Yippee! Shouted Grandpa Joe, seizing Charlie by the hand and dancing round the room. He certainly seems well enough, Mrs. Burkett said, laughing. Yes, perhaps you're right after all. Perhaps Grandpa Joe should be the one to go with him. I certainly can't go myself and leave the other three old people all alone in the bed for a whole day. Praise the Lord! At that moment, there came a loud knock on the front door. Mr. Burkett went to open it, and the next moment Sword, a newspaper man, and photographer were pouring into the house. They had tracked down the finder of the fifth golden ticket, and now they were wanted to get the full story for the front page of morning paper. For several hours, there was complete pandemonium in the little house, and it must have been nearly midnight before Mr. Burkett was able to get rid of them so that Charlie could to the bed. 들어주셔서 감사합니다.